for me, I know you share your testimony often because you teach in lots of different places and you share it every year. But for me, because I don't have that platform, it's different, but it's the same kind of thing. But my deprogramming was probably more the deprogramming of just life being all about fun and for me, and just kind of having to, be deprogrammed from those desires of just kind of self-fulfillment and of life being bigger than me. And I think now that I'm older, that's what the Lord's really been working on me the last number of years, is just realizing that this is not all that there is to life.
Welcome to this week's episode of the His Hill Podcast. My name is Kelly Doherty, and I'm your host. Today I have with me a very special guest. This should be an interesting conversation because whenever I sit down to talk with her, I don't always know where we're going. Anyway, I have with me today my wife, Arlene. I know that there'll be many of you who are alumni who will be excited about this conversation and probably wondering, when do we get to hear from Arlene? Well, today we do. Hi, Arlene.
Hi, dear.
Thanks for being with me today.
Always a pleasure. Or pressure.
Okay, good start. Now, Arlene, we've been married for over 36 years now.
That's a long time.
That's a long time. But, although we got married pretty young, you were 19. There was some years that, I just wasn't around. I've only heard about, and I'd like for you to share about that time here in this episode.
If I can remember.
Oh, I'm sure you can. You're younger than me. You were 19. I was 20 when we got married. Maybe we'll get to that and explain how that happened. It wasn't a bad thing. It was a great thing. So anyway, Arlene, tell everybody where you grew up.
Well, I grew up in Abbotsford in British Columbia, Canada. And I grew up in Aldergrove. I was born in MSA Hospital in Abbotsford. I'm the third down in the family. I have two older sisters and a younger brother. But there's kind of a gap between me and my next oldest sister. So it always was kind of like my mom would say she had two families. So she had her two older daughters, and then there was this gap, and then there was me and my brother. And so I always kind of felt myself as kind of being not necessarily the baby girl, but sort of the oldest of the youngest. I was kind of in charge of Jeff. It was great.
And Jeff
is my brother.
And Jeff always appreciated you being in charge, I'm sure.
I'm sure.
Okay.
But, yeah, go ahead.
Well, now, tell us a little bit about your mom and your dad.
Well, Mom and Dad were both born in the Ukraine under communism. They're both Mennonite, and so their childhood was very different than yours and mine, obviously.
Yeah. And
growing up in the Mennonite world was very different than even maybe some of the listeners who are Mennonite background, whose grandparents or great-grandparents came over in the early 1900s versus when my parents came over, which would have been in 1948. So their upbringing was very different. My dad was about 9 years older than my mom. And so my dad's experiences in the Ukraine, they always called it Russia, was very different than even my mom's, because my mom was so young and left the country when she was quite young. My dad, though, was the oldest of 4 kids, and because of the way the war was and the way the communist regime was, his father was taken away and sent to Siberia when my dad was 12. I think that really shaped Dad in how he raised us. I've thought about it over the years, and I think that him not having a father for so much of his not so much the growing up years, but just the teenage years, just how important that was, that he was not in his life, and Dad was the oldest, so he was sort of the provider as they were immigrants to Canada. So he took care of his mom and he watched out for his siblings. So I think that really shaped Dad and how he raised us. My aunt was funny. She's the youngest in their family, my dad's youngest sister, and she would always tell us, she said, oh, he always practiced everything on me first before he got to you. So every little line that my dad had, like, you know, you don't want to do the dishes? Oh, well, then just do them till you like them. You know, she said, well, that he used on me first. So he was kind of like a father figure even to his siblings. So my dad grew up very differently than most kids would grow up. He had a lot of responsibility. My mom was a lot younger than Dad, and she came to Canada with both parents, which was kind of rare. During the wartime then, a lot of the women wound up by themselves in Canada during World War II. But my mom was very fortunate and blessed by the Lord to have her dad with her, which she talks about still, just that was rare and a blessing in their life. So I know that shaped Mom in a different way. She was the youngest of just two daughters like we have, just the two girls, and she was the youngest, and was kind of a big span between she and her sister. So I know that shaped her too, but the Lord brought Mom and Dad together in Vancouver when my dad was working out there, or I don't know, Mom was working out there, or they were both working out there, and brought them together. And to back up just slightly, Dad was not a believer until he was about 16 years old, and he came to Christ as they had fled out of Russia. There were a lot of evangelical services being held in Europe at that time. Christians were really flooding in and giving the gospel, and so my dad accepted Christ at that time, and his life radically changed. So I know not only did not having a father around for a lot of his older teenage years, he also, on the flip side, he had the Father. He had God the Father.
Yeah. He was a very strong believer. You know, he passed away in his late 60s from cancer, and you know, that was and still is a big loss for us. But the years he had were really rich, profitable years, where he plugged into our lives. He displayed he's one of the four people in my life who were very influential in demonstrating the life of Christ. You know, he didn't necessarily have the terminology that Torchbearers have, but he definitely had the life
and relationship with the Lord. Yeah. That my uncle told me years later, my dad's brother said that after my dad came to Christ at 16, he just read the Bible cover to cover over and over again.
I didn't know that. Wow.
And he said he just ate up the Word of God. And I think after everything they'd experienced through the war and the losses that they had all experienced, and they were not even in Canada yet, they were still over in Europe, and I think Dad was so hungry. And so he was the only one in his family at that time. And I take that back. His aunt, Agnes, accepted Christ then too.
I didn't know that.
Around then.
Okay.
So it was a very important time in their life. And Dad, you know, I was saying that it shaped him not having his father, but I think the Lord shaped him into the man that he became, my father. Yeah. And he was a good dad. Yeah.
Henry was his name, and Henry did. You know, it was an incredible thing to watch a man live by faith. He, just conversations we had, things that I watched him with, is that, you know, it was not just it wasn't a terminology. It was a lifestyle.
Yeah.
And
he lived it.
Yeah, and
before us.
Yes, yeah, and it has even shaped my faith.
Yes.
And watching him for the 10 years that I got to be with him.
And my mom,
Yeah.
she was just, she's been amazing, because she was widowed at 57.
Yeah.
And, Mom has just been really in a lot of ways my hero with how she has pursued the Lord and allowed the Lord to be her husband for all these years. She's 84 now, and she has lived alone, and she has done it well.
Yeah, she has.
It has been painful for her, and it's been painful for us to watch her grieve for all these years, but she has really allowed the Lord to be her husband and her caregiver.
Yeah.
And it's been a real blessing for me to watch.
Yeah,
as
she's
her child.
just an incredible joy to be around.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're right. She has lived well.
She has.
Despite
the
circumstances. Yeah. And
for sure.
And that's incredible parents. And I think too of how our parents got along with each other.
Oh yeah.
It was an incredible blessing.
Oh yeah.
They just clicked right away. I remember you and I were dating. Mom and Dad flew up to Canada to meet everybody. And we didn't even, all of a sudden one afternoon, we're trying to find, where are they? And we found out the four of them just jumped in a car and took off.
I know.
They just got along so well. And that was a blessing, very, very much so. I think they really had a kindred spirit in Christ,
they did.
Just fellowship with each other and a mutual respect and love for each other. That was a blessing to us. So this is the kind of home you grew up in. And so how did you come to know Christ?
Well, we lived on a hobby farm, and Dad loved horses, and so we had a few horses. We had cows and different things at different times, rabbits and you name it, cats, dogs, and I just lived a really good childhood. Like Dad basically just gave us what he didn't have, not monetarily, but just fun. Like we had to work. We had to work hard. We all chipped in. We didn't sit around. There was no grass growing under feet in the summertime. We all had to work. We weren't, and I was young and I was still working, but it was good. It was good for me. Dad let us have lots of time. Mom and Dad had let us have lots of time to play. We had lots of time to work. It was just a balance, and we had a lot of church. We had a lot of church meetings. We had Pioneer Girls was something that they had for someone my age on Wednesday night at church, and Mom and her friends, they were all leaders at that program. And one of the evenings they were sharing the gospel through it was a little book that had colors in it, and each color represented another step in the plan of salvation.
The
do you remember that?
Wordless Bible?
Yeah,
Is that what it was
I
called?
think that's
Something
what
like
it
that,
was.
yeah.
So there would be a red color, and that would show the blood of Christ.
Right.
There would be black. Black would be sin, and white would be the purity that comes through Christ. I can't remember all the colors. And then I think there was green that was sharing how we grow in the Lord after we come to Him. And so it was things like that I was exposed to regularly. And I know after one of those meetings, I came home and my mom led me to Christ downstairs in the basement. I just came to Christ. I was 9 years old. Okay. And so that was, I'd had a really good life. I just knew I wanted to be with the Lord. I wanted to be in heaven with Him, And so I don't know that that's always bad. I didn't always understand everything, as you don't as a child. You don't necessarily get the full picture, but you do know that you're loved. And so. Yeah.
So, and then growing up now, you've come to know Christ. How old were you?
9.
9. We were both 9 when we came to Christ.
Were.
Yeah. And we were both born the same year.
Right.
So we both became believers about the same time.
Lived a similar life.
Yeah. Okay, so now you were growing up there in the Abbotsford area in the Fraser Valley. What was it like growing up? What was your life with Christ like as you were maturing?
Well, I read the Bible. I went to youth group. I went to church. I was involved. Played piano. All of those things that were part. It became, I think, for me, a little more works oriented. I often had doubts about my salvation. That kind of plagued me for probably, I would say it plagued me for at least 15 years, possibly longer. I was baptized when I was 12. So I really was desiring the Lord. But I wasn't always obedient through high school. I wasn't a bad kid, but I wasn't always a good kid. It's funny how you look back on your life and you I was kind of, I guess I'd probably call myself a consistent middle of the road person. I just kind of took, I want to say maybe even just the easy way. I just picked whatever I did. It was always kind of average. My grades were average. Everything was average about me. Even like not picking the best friends or the worst friends. I picked good friends. Like they were fun. Life was about fun. Life was about, school definitely got in the way of my social life. I mean, social life was way more important than school. And school was kind of in the way, but I did my school. I could have done way better. I like to have fun. I like to visit. I like to hang out with people. And that's really what I did through high school.
Okay.
Now, when I look back, I think, wow, I wish I would have pursued, some things harder. I wish I would have,
I know what you mean.
tried more. I wish I would have picked different friends sometimes. I wish I wouldn't have, maybe dated so much in high school. I wish I would have spent my time in other ways, pursuing other things. But, the Lord uses those things in our life despite our poor choices at times. And I know he was working all those things to bring me to the end of myself. And as he still does. I was listening this morning, actually, when I was walking the dog, I was listening to Major Thomas. I found him on the internet the other day, and I've been kind of slowly weeding through this sermon that he preached at his hill in 1983 Thanksgiving conference on Thanksgiving Day. I have been loving it. But in listening to him, I was just reminded of just, my own sinfulness. I don't think that sometimes we realize how sinful we actually are. We're not really we just kind of, for me, it's like, well, I'm just average. I'm not really bad, but I'm not really good. And so I'm just average.
Yeah.
And so we can kind of coast through life like that, just kind of being content with being average.
Yeah.
And so just being we'll get there, I guess, just, more in my later years, but the younger years, it was just more like that, just kind of average, had a lot of fun. But like I said, the Lord was moving me and he was drawing me and he was pursuing me, even if I wasn't always pursuing him. So
during these years, there was and I can identify with this, you want to be pleasing to the Lord, but you're depending on yourself to be good enough, and actually good enough is kind of what you start to accept as being good enough.
Big time.
Yeah. And so how did you end up going, how did you end up making the decision to go to his hill?
Well, that was also an interesting story. Anybody that grew up in Abbotsford knows that Torchbearers was just a option,
right.
A good option for anybody that grew up in that area, Abbotsford
And
area.
of course, they call it Capenry.
Capenry, yeah.
Right.
You go to some Capenry somewhere, or maybe YWAM or something like that.
And just
a gap year.
Just to explain that to people who maybe aren't alumni, don't understand all this. Torchbearers is the official name of the ministry that Arlene and I met at going to Bible. So that's part of what His Hill belongs to. But the original center is called Capenry Hall, and because of that, a lot of people assume that the whole ministry is called Capenry. So so in Canada, that's one of the places where it's commonly known as Capenry. So that's what Arlene means when she says that she had heard of Capenry, that was an option.
So my sister had gone to Capenry to Torchbearers in Australia a number of years before, and she met her husband there, which was kind of neat. And I always kind of thought I was going to go to Australia. But when push came to shove, when I graduated from high school, money just really wasn't there to be able to do an Australia trip. There was, I stayed back in the fall after I graduated from high school, and I worked. But there was a man in our church, and there were people that were really pushing me, wanting me to go to YWAM in Hawaii. I was thinking about that. But then this one man in our church, he had been a student at His Hill prior, quite a few years prior, maybe 7-10 years before me, and he was kind of trying to persuade me to go to YWAM. And for some reason, the Lord just was impressing on me that I really probably needed to go to His Hill. And so he came to me one day and he says, well, okay, I guess if you're going to go to His Hill, this is what you're going to be taught. And he had all these cassette tapes of Major Thomas from when he was a student. And I was like, that's so funny. So he hands me these cassette tapes, which I don't know that I ever listened to at that time. Maybe not even, I can't remember if I ever did. And so it was just kind of that process of somebody kind of pushing me in a different direction, and I opposed it, which frankly, that's not easy for me. I knew it. Looking back on it, I know it was the Lord that was pushing me, because my personality and my natural bent would be to please.
Right. Yeah.
And so to oppose somebody older than me like that and kind of stand my ground, that's not Arlene. So it is the Lord. So I felt like, looking back on it now, the Lord really was saying, go to His Hill and don't turn back.
Yeah, I think I understand what you're saying. There's times in our life that we can look back. I remember Mrs. Thomas, Major's wife. She used to tell us that when she was younger, she used to ask the Lord, "Why, Lord, why?" And she'd list all the things that she had to deal with as a younger woman. When she got older, she said that the Lord started to show her some things, and she, instead of saying "Why, Lord," her statement changed to "That's why." And we can look back. You and I are getting old enough now to where we can look back and see things and know that was the Lord.
Yeah,
that
for
He
sure.
was faithful even when I, in my immaturity, in my in my immaturity, not
big time,
and we can see that. And just to explain a little bit, the reason He didn't want you to go is because He, after leaving His Hill, had taken a different path on some theological issues, doctrinal issues that the Torchbearers do not agree with, and that's why He was pushing you to go somewhere else. But so you did come. You came in January, right? You came in January 1985
with a host of other first time there students, which is kind of rare, but there was a lot of us. I want to say 25 of us were new. And that, I don't know if that's ever happened before or since then.
Yeah, I don't recall.
I mean, I really didn't feel new because there were so many people that were new. It was rare.
Yeah. And you got there. Now, I was already there. I came in the fall in 84, and you showed up in January of 85.
Right.
And that was interesting for you and me.
Yeah, it was. It was interesting.
I just a quick side. I knew that you were coming didn't know who you were, but I knew you were coming because just a month earlier, toward the end of the first semester, I was in my dorm in Bethel for you alumni. It doesn't exist anymore, by the way. It has been torn down, which was a sad day for me.
Yeah, I bet.
But anyway, we were in Bethel, and my roommates and I, and we're just hanging around. I remember I was laying on the bed with my feet pushed up against the top bunk, and one of the other guys ran into our dorm and said, "Hey guys, pictures of the new students are up." And every one of us knew exactly what he meant. What he meant was, hey, pictures of the new girls are up.
Oh, brother.
And without saying a word, we jumped up, took off running down the road and across the grass, which you're not supposed to do, past the chapel, down the sidewalk, into the rock house, which is the office. And the bulletin board, it was the back bulletin board, is where they had the pictures up. So I ran in there. I was the first one there. So I quickly scanned all the pictures, and my gaze just was fixated on this picture of this girl right in the middle of the board. She was gorgeous. And I thought, I'm going after her, which is really
dumb.
I was going to say it's really strange for me to be so bold because I'm a very shy person. Okay. And you know, I'm very withdrawn, especially when I first meet people. It's after that I start to get a little bit, you know, more adventurous, maybe talk more. I remember students one time coming to you, Arlene, and asking, "What's up with Kelly? We see him in class. He's animated, tells stories, he moves around, but then outside of class, he's very quiet. He doesn't make much eye contact, and he doesn't what was it? Well, he doesn't do. He's very withdrawn.
We've been working on that.
So he says, so they asked you, and they literally asked you this question. They were in the fish house, our dining hall. They were sitting with you. They got it before I walked in, and they were telling you all this. What's up with Kelly? We see him in the classroom. We see him outside of class. Is he schizo? And you just started to laugh. And you told them, no, listen, he's very shy. He's quiet when he first meets people, but give him about 3 weeks, and then you're going to wish he would shut up.
Pretty much. Story of my life. How long have we been married? I can't ever get a word in edgewise.
Arlene's always saying Kelly is a teacher, and so that means every conversation comes from the mindset of a teacher. He has to get through his points. He has to make sure everything is said before anybody else talks, and it's very frustrating for her.
It can be very frustrating, exasperating.
But so anyway, just to say that's me. I'm very shy, but I see your picture, and I think, I'm going after her. And I did. You know,
yes, you did.
Right immediately. I couldn't believe it. I remember you walked in. I was looking for this redhead. And I need to explain. If you don't know Arlene, she's not a redhead. She's blonde.
Gray.
She was blonde. And but I'm colorblind. So the picture I was looking at looked like it was red to me, which was interesting because my dad thought my mom was a blonde and she was a redhead. And so it's just...
This is a family
problem.
Family problem.
So anyway, I'm looking for this redhead and I can't find her. But all of a sudden, it was the first full day of classes. You walked into the front of the chapel and you went, and I recognized right away, that's her. And she walked down the second aisle. She went about 3 or 4 desks down that aisle, and then you crawled over the desk, and because you wanted to sit on the other aisle, and you went up a couple more desks and you sat down, which I was very happy with because you were right in line with the speaker. So I could watch you. I could look at you the whole hour, and it looked like I'm paying attention. Okay, so anyway, that's how that's how we met, but that was how I found out. Okay, that's the one. And then we had that moment where I finally had the guts to talk to you, and then it was things started going from
Yes.
there. And we just celebrated this summer our 36th year of marriage.
Yeah, we sure
We
did.
got married. We were young. We were very young. Our parents were very concerned about it, but supported us. And there's a whole long story with that too, and
Yeah.
it's funny too. But we don't have time to go into it right now. If you guys really want to hear the story, maybe you could write to me and let me know, and then we could maybe actually get around to that sometime. But anyway, we did meet at His Hill, and we got married not long after that. But anyway, you're at His Hill now. What was it like for you, apart from us dating? What was it like being at His Hill?
Well, it was sort of a continuation of what I was just saying. It was just fun.
Okay.
I was just having fun again.
Yeah.
You know, I'm just a social person. Everything's kind of fun, and life is just fun. And that's kind of how I handled His Hill. Unfortunately, I learned things. The Lord was teaching me things, but I was just having fun. Mm. And I stayed for summer camp. It was good. It was hard for me to be a counselor and in the heat and the bugs and everything else. And I was down at the canoeing. I was on a canoe pretty much all summer, and so there were a lot of really stretching times. You know, there were kids that were, you know, we were leading to the Lord. Mm-hmm. It was a neat summer. But
it was a profitable summer.
It was profitable summer. Right. Yeah. Yeah. Certainly looking back, I see just how good it was for me to be pushed and stretched in ways that I hadn't been before. But was I listening to the message? Was I understanding? Was I hearing Christ is your life? Not in my heart. Mm-hmm. I wasn't. It was still pretty fun and social for me. That was life.
I think that's interesting because I have found that to say Christ is my life is a phrase that is very well accepted throughout Christendom. Also, I've noticed how many ministries, churches and parachurch ministries that will say we are Christ-centered. It's a very much accepted phrase. But I don't know how much it's really understood.
Yeah, I'm sure not, because I certainly didn't understand.
Right. I mean, I remember.
I mean, I thought I had to read The Saving Life of Christ when I first came to the Hill.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, it was just straight over my head. You know, I did not. I mean, here I am now, all these gazillion years later, seeking out Major Thomas's sermons to listen to. But back then, I was just. I've done that. Yeah. The title, I think, killed me right off the bat. The Saving Life of Christ, and I'm saved. Right. Let's move on. Yeah. And I didn't bother to even really pay attention to what the book was trying to say, what Major was trying to say. I had to read it quickly because it was sort of required reading. Right. And I got there late because it was January, right? And so all of us who just came in, I think y'all had probably already read the book. I think you had read it, and I think this was sort of an extra required reading.
Okay, could have been, yeah.
And I just practically skimmed it. I'm sure I kind of did the same thing as I did through high school. You know, you just kind of get by. Yeah. Chapter titles, getting by, just doing the minimum. I was thinking about them the other day, actually, when I was looking at the Bible and reading, and I'm like, wow, I sure really sold myself short. You know, I should have spent more time. I should have really read these passages and dug in, because there's just so much more there than, you know, basically the title that's given at the beginning of the chapter or each paragraph, you know. Yeah,
I find that this is, every year we see this, you know, we know this with students, that there are those that are just kind of getting by, you know, they're it's good enough to be good enough. Right. And don't realize that's where we are.
No.
And
you're young, you just...
So for some of us, like you and me, there's some deprogramming. There's
big time.
There's some, there's a lot that the Lord is just patiently working out of us. For some students, they come and sit in class, and in the very first class, just are so, it just clicks, and their eyes are open to what it means to be in Christ.
Right.
Just a couple of weeks ago with this new student body, one of the students came up to me after class to say, Kelly, I just want to share with you that while you were giving that illustration, and we were looking at Genesis, and there was just a goofy little illustration, she said, all of a sudden, I realized what it means for Christ to be my life. Mm-hmm. And you just praise God, and we celebrate that. But but the Lord is faithful.
He is.
He's faithful to use that year to, and that's something I have to remember as a teacher there, that it's not for me to open these minds up and, do the tinkering, and there it is. There's the truth now. But this is simply a step in the life they have with Christ, a step of God's faithfulness. And for some, this is the time that they come to realize Christ is their life. Others, this is a step in taking them to that, which is, I think, what the Lord was doing with you and me.
Yeah, big time.
Okay.
Oh, yeah. It was, for me, I know you share your testimony often because you teach in lots of different places and you share it every year. But for me, because I don't have that platform, it's different, but it's the same kind of thing. But my deprogramming was probably more the deprogramming of just life being all about fun, and for me, and just kind of having to, be deprogrammed from those desires of just kind of self-fulfillment and of life being bigger than me. And I think now that I'm older, that's what the Lord's really been working on me the last number of years, is just realizing that this is not all that there is to life. What we see, what we experience each day, what we touch, because I'm a very hands-on person. I'm not the teacher. I'm the one who likes to do. And so with that comes a lot of here and now, right now. I'm gonna do what's in front of me. I'm just gonna throw myself into that, and those can be a lot of pros to that. I am where I am. I'm just gonna throw myself into that instead of wallowing maybe about the past or longing for the future. But the flip side of it is that the Lord really has to take that type of a person that is in the here and now and has to broaden their thoughts to be, this isn't all there is, Arlene. The here and now, good. You're in reality with your life right now. But you have to remember that I am your future. I am your past. I am your present.
Not just a part of it, not just in it.
I am it.
Yeah.
And that, so I think that deprogramming had to take place, and still does, because I think we're all products of our world and of our culture. And we accept so many things that we just don't even know we're accepting until we're kind of making choices that are reflecting the fact that we have accepted something that is not godly. Because I think that happens really slow.
Have so easily accepted.
Yeah, so
another
easily.
gospel.
Little things.
Yeah, like
things.
Paul warns against. Yeah.
Right. So I think for me, that was more what he had to deprogram me of, is just the reality. And I think marrying young was part of that. That the Lord knew that in me marrying young, I was going to be thrust into a world of responsibility and of, for lack of a better way of saying it, because I don't want it to come across in a bad way, but lack of fun. Not that marriage wasn't fun.
And not that I wasn't fun.
Of course not. You're very fun, dear. Always fun. But what I mean is just that life isn't just about what I want, or, now all of a sudden there was another person I had to consider, and then eventually children came along, and and the Lord has just been good and faithful to just, okay, yes, go ahead with the task that's at hand and just be thrust into it and enjoy it and do it. but remember that this isn't all there is, that I am the great I am. You know, I am bigger than all of this, and I am orchestrating all of these events so that, you know, you'll be conformed into my image. And so, and then in the end, we will see the big picture. You know, the glorious picture that we cannot even imagine what it is right now. You know, because we just see the
beyond,
what's in front of us.
Beyond
you
what
know?
we could imagine or think.
Right.
Yeah.
So,
and seeing clearly what we don't see right now. Yeah.
So that was Bible school, unfortunately. But the fortunate part was that the Lord used you in that process as well, because it was through meeting you and getting me out of my surroundings, not that they were bad surroundings, but taking me and plucking me out of them, moving to Louisiana. And then we were up back in Canada for a while with school, and then we were back in Louisiana.
Let's talk about that, because this is how this was
all part of those years.
This was a pivotal moment for you. You know,
big time.
I had moved to Canada after Bible school and attended a Bible college that was in your hometown.
Right. After
graduation, there was just no opportunity. We couldn't find anything. And boy, I mean, I knocked on doors. Literally, I phone calls, sent the resume out, but there was nothing. And and then had thought, well, we need to go back to Louisiana, join the denomination that I grew up in, because it was larger, more opportunity. You know, it's just all worldly reasoning. And then there'll be something there. And I remember you saying, well, Kelly, if you think that's what the Lord has for us, then I'm with you. And I said, I do think it's what the Lord has. Let's pray. You know, and I think back on that so many times, my goodness, you know, here, God, here's my wonderful will for my life for you to accomplish. Please bless it. You know, so, but sometimes the Lord gives us, like he did the children of Israel with, you know, when they had the manna and they wanted something else, sometimes he gives us what we ask for. And look out.
But, you know, it's interesting you bring all that up, because I'm studying personally the book of Ruth, and I was thinking about that this morning. I didn't really even know we were going to have this conversation.
Yeah, this is a last minute thing. That,
on air. But I was thinking about Ruth and Naomi, and I thought, you know how you always say, you know, the Lord, you know, it was your effort that brought us to Louisiana.
Right.
That this was your reasoning, your thinking, and I came with. And I was thinking of Naomi and how she was doing that constantly. And it was her reasoning. It's like, okay, well, there's no food, so let's go back. Okay, there's no husband, let's find you one. You know, it's all this human reasoning. And Ruth...
To do a good thing.
Right. That's right. And Ruth was, you know, I'm with you.
Yeah.
You know, like I'm with you. And that's what chapter 1 is all about, where she's just like, I'm with you. And that's where I am. You know, I'm married to you. And I trust you, and so let's go. You know, and so we went.
And let me interject just a second.
But in that process of Naomi and Ruth going back, even if Naomi was doing it for kind of, you know, just physical reasons and for human reasoning, you know, God was using it in the good of Ruth's life. And so for me,
and
you
even
can
in the
go
good of Naomi's
and the
life.
good of Naomi's life, right? Yeah. But I'm just going to put myself in as Ruth. So you're Naomi lucky.
Thanks. Okay, so now in going there, we moved back to Louisiana. We did end up in a church there. I was an associate pastor. Some wonderful people that we got to know there. We had some good friends there. The youth group, just precious as could be.
Yeah.
And we, but the church had some serious issues, like you would not believe, and we didn't know that going there. And you know, not to take up so much time with this, but just to cut to the end, where it was quite wearing on us.
Very much so.
To say, I mean, that's not even giving the full explanation. I mean, it was so wearing, it became a physical issue for me.
Well, and for me, the fun was sapped out.
Yeah.
I mean, I want fun in life. I want things to be fun. I always have. But boy, it was not fun.
No, it wasn't.
It was hard. It was exhausting mentally. It was exhausting spiritually. We were just
and physically.
worn out physically. And we didn't have any children at that time. It was me and you. I was teaching piano, and we were working with the youth, and that kind of lifestyle that we had. And I know for me, I was back to the saving life of Christ moments where I'm like, well, I've done that.
Yeah.
And I
remember you coming to me one time saying, Kelly, this was after a sermon, a Sunday morning sermon, and you said, Kelly, if the Christian life is only and all about getting saved, I'm not sure I want this. And I tell you what, to scare a pastor, if you want to scare a pastor, have your wife say that. And I remember sitting up one night and just thinking through all that we were dealing with there, and realizing, just an epiphany right there. I did this. I put us here.
Thanks, Naomi.
You're welcome, Ruth. And I remember thinking, and then talking to the Lord, saying, Lord, I did this. I confess that. And so I am too scared to do anything about it, because I see what I can accomplish apart from you. So, Lord, I trust you.
Yeah.
Here we are. I'm the music and youth pastor, so I will trust you and lead the music. I will trust you and lead the kids. But all this junk that's going on around us, I will trust you with that.
But that happened after something important happened to me.
Okay.
Because I remember that happening after. Before that happened, because I was part of that, actually. That whole epiphany that you had. Mm-hmm. Before that, I was really struggling. Like I had said, I struggled with assurance of salvation for a long time. Yeah. And then we had gone down to Kelly's parents' church, which was in Abbeville, and we listened to Bob Hobson. And a lot of you probably remember him. He's passed away now, and he hasn't come to His Hill for probably 10 years, maybe.
Oh, it's been
if
longer
not
than
more.
that,
okay.
Yeah.
But so you recent students didn't have the privilege of hearing him, but the Lord used him mightily in my own life because we took the youth group down to listen to a series of meetings that he was having down in the church down there. And I sat and I listened, and I heard for the first time with my heart that I wished I had heard when I was 18 years old, but now I was 22 and hearing with my heart that Jesus was more than a ticket to heaven, that he was truly my everything.
Yeah. For me to live.
For me to live is Christ, yeah. And to know him and to want to know him and to thank him. That the language, that was really where Bob always liked to use the term, the language of faith is thank you. And that really resonated with me. It was like, thank you. So all of those years of kind of self-fulfillment, they're so selfish. It's so selfish to live your life every day just about yourself and about having fun or wanting to just have fun or just wanting to be with a lot of people and just have a fun life. That's just so self-centered. It's so superficial. And that's what I was, just really superficial. And the Lord was like, no, that's not who you are as a believer. What you need to learn to do with me, Arlene, is tell me thank you. Start thanking me for all the things that aren't fun. Start thanking me for all the things that you struggle with. Start thanking me, and then watch me. Watch me start to work. Because I'm at work. I've been at work all along, Arlene. And it was just a beautiful time in my life to just come to realize that I just had him. He'd always been there, but I didn't really recognize it. Just thought I had to trust myself.
And what a blessing it was for me, to have it, because the Lord had recently worked the same in my heart.
Right, yeah. And maybe a year.
Right. And to have a companion, to have a spouse who was on the same page.
Oh, and I remember us reading scripture, and I remember one night in particular, I leaned over to you and I said, Kelly, Jesus is all over these pages. I mean, I couldn't not read the Bible the same. Reading the Bible was totally, I couldn't even try to read it like I used to.
It was like reading a new book.
A new book.
Yeah.
And it was such a blessing and such a beautiful time for me. It was just fresh. Everything was fresh. Everything was new. And Jesus hadn't changed. He was the same.
Yeah.
He was just inviting me into what was already had been, what always has been there. Just come on, join me. Just be with me. Do it like I do it. Like don't imitate me, but just trust me. Just live with me. Enjoy me.
Yeah.
All the things that I enjoyed in life, and I do enjoy. No, they're nothing. Just enjoy me. I'm the creator. I'm the one who made you. I was there. I was there in the beginning.
That's right.
So, yeah, it was a great time, and I listened over and over and over to the cassette tapes of Bob Hobson's over and over, much to poor Kelly.
Well, that was
not very polite when he'd come in the room and I'd be listening, and then he'd come in, hey, Arlene, and I'd be like, shh, rewind, I was all annoyed.
Yeah. I was wondering what is going on.
Yeah.
And
I was just learning.
Yeah.
I was just soaking it up, and it was a real sweet time. So then going through the ending of those years there, we were there almost 2 full years, and I guess how long do you think we had after that? Maybe a year. I think for me it probably happened within.
Well, we were there for
first
2
year.
years,
right? But for me, learning what I learned was that about a year in.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
So we had maybe another year or so left there together, and it was different.
It
because
was.
You and I were
It
a
was
team
a
now.
different world. I mean, and all these problems that were around us, which were big issues.
Yeah.
It just
perspective was different.
Oh my goodness, the things that we were, the things that we were having to deal with. We came on staff 6 months later. A pastor came on staff with his family, and neither one of us knew what we were getting into when we got there. And all of us were just in shock over the things that we were having to deal with. And
it was awful.
But the Lord took care of those things.
Yeah, He
without
did.
our scheming, without our best laid plans. He took care of those things in truly miraculous ways.
Did.
And
just waiting.
Yeah.
Waiting on him, which is not easy to do, is it?
No.
But it seemed easy at the time.
Simple, but not easy.
Yeah.
And then when the last problem was taken care of, and we knew the Lord had done this work.
Yeah.
That's when Charlie McCall called.
Yeah, that's right.
And asked if we would be willing to come on staff. And that was, the beginning of 23 years of full time.
Yeah.
And it was incredible to see how the Lord just laid these things out, worked in our hearts. This is what it means to be mine.
Yeah.
And he wasn't finished. He kept growing, and there was a lot that happened between us coming on staff and now, 30 years later, that would take, oh my goodness, two more hours to skim through. But we've gone through a lot of ups and downs over these years, and but never without the presence of Christ, who's the head of all rule and authority. Never without the faithfulness of the Lord, and I think maybe we should get together again with the mics and talk about that sometime. Just what the Lord has done, how He's taken us through these things, and how He has shown Himself faithful.
I remember talking to Judy Westbrook. Sonny was a director when Kelly and I were students. Some of you probably know Sonny, and he's been interviewed on the podcast. If you want to go back and listen to him, it's a wonderful testimony. But his wife, Judy, and I were together years and years ago. We were on staff already, and I was talking to her about something, and I think I was complaining about something that was going on in life. And she just looked at me and she says, Arlene, but you know where to go. She says, so many people don't. She says, they don't know where the answer is. She says, but you know. Yeah.
And I think that's what it means to say thank you.
Right.
Thank you, Jesus, that this is not without you.
Yeah.
This is not without you who is the head of all rule and authority. Thank you that this does not depend on me.
Right.
Well,
we got through less than half my life, dear.
I know it. We're going to have to. We're going to have to keep going. Yeah, we'll get back together. I think there's a lot to talk about that would be profitable to talk about. But,
possibly.
But just so you, the listener, understand that I threw this on Arlene just this morning, and she was willing to do it.
His specialty.
She was willing to do it, though she immediately was panicked. But I knew it was going to be great. Arlene, if anybody would like to correspond with you, would you mind giving your email?
Sure. That would be A.E. Doherty, so AEDOHERTY 66 @gmail.com.
And mine is Kelly, KELLY, @hishill.org. Want to thank you again for listening, for taking part in this episode. And we want to end, like we do all of our episodes, not just a catchphrase, but something that really is dear to our heart, to encourage you to remember to keep your eyes fixed on Jesus. Thanks, Arlene. I love you.
Love you too.
Well, we're off to a great start for Bible school. The Lord has seen fit to give us a full house, both with the first year and the second year programs. And again, as He's done for so many years, He's given us a great group of students whose hearts are good, and that they want to profit from this time. They're listening in class. They're hearing things, some things they've never heard before, and they're grappling through that. They're dealing with it. So I ask that you would be praying for them as they do so. As I speak, the whole student body, along with the staff, are on our fall mission trip. They're up in Marshall, Texas, and they're helping with restoration of homes, of lower income homes, people with their homes. And they'll be back. They'll be back. It's tomorrow, so the end of this week. But while they're there, if you think about it, please be praying for them and pray that this time that they're there would be of profit and glorifying to the Lord as people see Christ in them, that they would see Christ in them. If you're interested, live in the local area, or if you want to come down, I would encourage you to look into the Thanksgiving conference, but to do so quickly, because it has been filling up the last couple of years, and I think we're very close to it being filled now. If it should fill up, I would encourage you to, if you're not local, to look in some of the bed and breakfasts in the area and come on in and are out and take part of it with us. As always, you can stream it live, so be looking on the website for announcements as to how to do that. This year we have Peter Reed, the director of the general director of Torchbearers, who's going to be coming back, and also we have Peter Thomas, who has been the director both of New Zealand and Australia Torchbearer centers, and is going to be here for that week. So would encourage you to take part in that as well. And I want to thank my wife again for just last minute like this coming in and sitting down with me to just talk about how the Lord's been faithful in her life and showing Himself to her in Christ. And so we will be posting part 2 of that interview next week, so make sure to come back and join us. And finally, once again, I want to encourage you to be keeping your eyes fixed on Jesus. Thanks for joining us.